This offseason, there are so many big names who are free agents. There will be many moves across the league as every team wants their chance to go and win the Super Bowl. One move that I see getting talked about a little too much is a potential blockbuster trade that would send Justin Jefferson to the Chiefs. I can't even begin to tell you how in trouble the league would be if this trade were to happen. I mean, you have one of the best quarterbacks of all time, the best tight end of all time, one of the best wide receivers in the league, arguably one of the best coaches of all time. It would be kind of similar to when Randy Moss went to the Patriots, but he was already 10 years into the league at that point. But this is on another level because we're talking about Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. If Andy Reid got Justin Jefferson, oh man, the league is in trouble. Now this does sound amazing, it's not really realistic at all. The only way I can see the Chiefs getting this done, like the very slim possibility, is if Jefferson first specifically requests a trade to Kansas City. The Chiefs would then probably have to give up Snead on the tag and their first and second round picks and probably even more. But like I said, it's unrealistic. This scenario is highly unlikely since it's not realistic at all. These TV shows and talk shows just love pushing this idea out. It would be a super slim chance of that happening, but if Brett Veach were to cook up something for the three-peat, this might be one of the best moves that they can pull something off. But with the Chiefs tagging Snead and dropping MVS, this is good for the cap space situation. This means the Chiefs are going to be first working on a long-term contract with Chris Jones so he can play at the beginning of the season and throughout training camp, unlike last season. The Chiefs gave Snead the permission to seek a trade while being tagged, and I do think there's a market for a player like Snead as he's coming off one of the best cornerback seasons we've seen in a while. He's also a very physical player type. He was targeted 90 times and didn't allow a touchdown, which hasn't been done since Stephon Gilmore in 2019, who also won the Defensive Player of the Year that year. A lot of teams need cornerbacks, so if Snead and his agents were to find a destination, I would just assume they would give up draft compensation for him, which at the end of the day is better than letting him walk as a free agent. If he was to leave, at least you get picks out of it. The Chiefs dropping MVS freed up an extra $12 million, and with the league raising the cap space for each team by $50 million, that actually helped the Chiefs a lot. This means the Chiefs can really make a move on a solid receiver and see if they take a contract for a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. I think the Chiefs can go for a few different options this offseason. I talked about this before, but I believe it's very unlikely for them to go for Mike Evans, but with them starting to free up cap space, it makes me curious what they're planning. Because yes, Mike Evans is 30, he'll be 31 at the start of the season. That doesn't take away the fact he tied for first place in touchdowns last season with Baker Mayfield as his quarterback, and that's no disrespect to Baker at all, by the way. Mike Evans and Mahomes, that would just be insane together. He tied last season with Tyreek Hill, so finally giving Mahomes another deep threat like that will be exciting if they can get that done. With Snead on the tag, they just need to figure out a way to get Chris Jones on a contract. If Chris Jones was already locked in and they didn't have to worry about him, then Mike Evans would be a no-brainer, but Jones is expected Aaron Donald money, and it's well-deserved. The Chiefs need to focus on paying him first before going for any big market player. Chris Jones is one of the most important pieces to this dynasty, and if they want to get this three-peat, they're going to need him as well. Brett Veach said after winning the Super Bowl that signing Chris Jones is at the top of the priorities, and it was just recently reported that they're growing optimism that they will be able to do that. If the Chiefs can lock in Chris Jones on a contract, they can try to make an effort for Mike Evans by giving him a contract and seeing what they can do, but they could also try to get Calvin Ridley or even Michael Pittman Jr., but he probably is going to get an even higher contract than Evans. Outside of a potential blockbuster trade, the only receivers I see the Chiefs going for is either Mike Evans or Calvin Ridley. I think those two just make the most sense, but with them making an effort to clear out cap space, I don't want to take away the idea of possibly signing Mike Evans. I do think Calvin Ridley is the smarter option between the two, but regardless, the Chiefs will have to fill in the spot MVS filled anyways. Even though he had career lows in every category last season and only 2 or 3 touchdowns in the regular season, he came up big in the playoffs in both playoff runs, so you have to give that to him. Even his first year with the Chiefs, he was a solid deep threat. Whichever team picks him up will be getting a good player out of him regardless of what people say about him. The combine is also happening right now, so the Chiefs will be looking out carefully to see who they'll be taking in this year's draft. I really hope the Chiefs go with a receiver in the first round, and I fully expect them to. Last year they traded up for Rashee Rice, and that ended up working great. He finished the year with 938 yards for 7 touchdowns and 79 receptions. He also only had 3 drops on the season, and he was really only getting targeted towards the second half of the year. The whole first half of the season, Mahomes wasn't even really looking his way. After the game against the Raiders, he had 10 or 11 targets, and he did for every game after that. Last time they drafted a receiver besides that was Sky Moore, and that hasn't worked out the best, but there's so many solid prospects in this year's draft. It would be interesting to see if the Chiefs would consider going in on Mike Evans. If they sign Chris Jones to a big contract, I just don't know how to be able to. But there are plenty of other options like Darnell Mooney as well from the Chicago Bears. I wouldn't even be upset with that at all if the Chiefs were able to sign him, but they have to figure out a contract with Chris Jones as soon as possible because they can't let that keep going on for much longer. It was reported that the team's interested in Chris Chris Jones are just waiting to see what he's going to do and what the Chiefs are going to offer him. It's all known that he wants to come back to Kansas City, so I would assume a contract will be done, but I wonder what they'll be able to pay him. And when they do bring back Chris Jones, I wonder what they're going to be doing with this wide receiver situation, because they need to pick up a wide receiver in the draft or in free agency. They just lost one and they need to have more because they led the league in drops last year, and that can't happen again. You know, it's all good that they showed up in the playoffs when it mattered most, but they need to be consistent all year long. I'm sure the last thing they want to go through is another season of people underestimating them and calling them one of the worst offenses in the league. But I think with Rashee Rice stepping up a ton, I think he's going to have a great offseason and great training camp. He's going to have an even better season next year, as Mahomes is going to be targeting him throughout the whole entire season from beginning to end. The Chiefs rookies have been doing great, you know, like Trent McDuffie, Pacheco, Rashee Rice. They just draft so well, and I assume they're going to draft nicely again this year. There's so many prospects available, like I keep saying, but I hope the Chiefs can somehow get Keon Coleman, but I don't think he'll be available at the end of the first round. But the Chiefs do need to get a wide receiver. If it's Mike Evans on the Chiefs would make this team so much better on offense. He did have a lot of drops, and especially in the playoffs. He had a lot of drops in the playoffs, but he's just such a talented receiver that you have to, if you're able to, you have to try to at least. And if the Chiefs trade Steed, they might be able to do it. But again, they have to sign Chris Jones. I think if the Chiefs can afford Mike Evans, they should at least offer him a contract and see what they do. But they should not go all in on him. If they don't have to go all in on him, I say do it. But if it's going to be too expensive and it's going to cost us in the long run, then we should be focusing on somebody else. Let me know what you think down below. Who should the Chiefs pick up in this offseason? What draft prospects are you looking at as well?